Oh, so to everybody, welcome to Storytime with Tiana. Forgive me for my lateness. This live was late, but my cooking's never. I want to first start off by saying that we are doing this for the Corona hashtag Storytime to make sure that all kids have the opportunity of being able to have story time, opportunities, and a chance to be able to get things. Hello there, hi. Welcome. Oops. Welcome to Storytime with Tiana. Today we're going to read Leo, the Late Bloomer. We have other books as well here for us today. Hi, welcome. Hope everyone's doing well. So as I put my glove back on, if you have kids, please invite them to the live. This is a children-friendly live as I'm dressed as Princess Tiana. Enchanté, everybody. Enchanté. So, today the book is Leo, the Late Bloomer. Currently going live on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you, y'all. By Robert Krause. Pictures by Jose Argo. So Leo, the Late Bloomer. Leo, he couldn't do anything right. He couldn't read. Poor thing, he couldn't write. He couldn't draw either. He wasn't sloppy either. Quite messy, quite like Naveen. And he never, ever said a word. What's the matter, Leo? Asked Leo's father. Nothing, said Leo's mother. Leo's just a late bloomer. Better late than never, thought Leo's father. Every single day, Leo's father watched the signs of blooming. You see him, y'all? He hiding out in the trees right here. Leo's right there. Every night, Leo's father watched him for signs of blooming. Are you sure Leo's a late bloomer? Asked Leo's father. Patience. A watch bloomer doesn't bloom. Leo's father watched television instead of Leo. See, his dad decided to watch television. Sometimes things bloom right under our noses. The snow came. Leo's father wasn't watching, but Leo still wasn't blooming. The trees bud. Leo's father wasn't watching, but Leo still wasn't blooming. Tiana's special friend, Miss Lay Forward Zone. I hope you and the baby girl stay in tune. Then, one day, in his own good time, Leo bloomed. Blooming just like a flower, like a daisy on spring's day. He could read. He could ride. He could draw. Look at that. Don't that look like me, y'all? He nearly ate everything. He also spoke, and it wasn't just a word. It was a whole sentence, and that sentence was, I made it. Yes, you did, Leo. So Leo was a late bloomer. Pretty much like Miss Tiana here. And sometimes the best things bloom when we aren't watching. And when we encourage our kids and our children. Just like Leo's mother and Leo's father. No worries, I have more books along the way. Now, if you stay tuned tomorrow, around this time, Tiana's special friend Tinkerbell will be on with her wings and pixie dust float. Now, this book is called Friends to the Insecure. Written by R.B. Moore, illustrated by Tony Moore. Now, this is one of Tiana's mentors, too. It was a hot, sticky day. On Fraser Street, Louis, Anthony, and Matt sat on the step of Louis' front porch. Mrs. Garcia, Louis' mom, brought the boys tall, cool glasses of lemonade and oatmeal cookie. The boys thanked Mrs. Garcia as she went back into the house. Louis, younger sister Carmen. Boy, Louis, your mom makes the best lemonade, said Matt. Yeah, agreed Anthony. It's really good. After everyone drained their glasses and all the cookies were gone, the boys began to think of how they should have spent the rest of their day. All of a sudden, they saw Mel, Matt's twin brother, running towards him. You see him running? Hey, what took y'all so long? Yelled Matt. Hey guys, puffed Mel. I found something along over the way. What? Shouted the other boys. Tracks. Wild animal tracks. And said excitedly Mel. Like what kind of animal tracks? Said Anthony. I don't know, replied Mel. Maybe bear tracks. Hopefully not. Just where did you see those wild animal tracks, Matt said his brother. In the lot next to Hudson Market, said Mel. No way, declared Louise. Definitely way, replied Mel. Come on, I'll show you the way. First, let me tell Mom where we're going, said Louise. Then we'll go see your wild animal tracks. After making sure the boys were okay and his cup was empty, the boys followed Mel to the empty lot next to Mr. Hudson's store. Come on, they over here, shouted Mel. Sure enough, there was the biggest set of animal tracks the boys have ever seen. Whoa! What made these? Asked Anthony. These look pretty big, examined Matt. What kind of animals could have made these? Getting closer, Louise. I told you, replied a very satisfied male. Louise began to follow the tracks as he continued to examine them. The older boys began to follow Louise. Gentlemen, I think we may have a mystery, Louise examined, as he suddenly stopped walking. Hey, we have more people. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining on this lovely Friday afternoon. Let us continue with the story, shall we? Please like and share and heart this video. Okay, perhaps this is the case for the great detective, Matt Bridge, announced Matt. I doubt it. There's definitely a job for Afro Boy, declared Anthony. You're both out of your leagues. With the scientific know-how, I can clear this up like that. Mel snapped. Well, guys, it may not be such a mystery after all, said Louise, a bit disappointed. What? Shouted the other boys. Look a little closer. I think it's a dog, said Louise. A dog? Said Mel. It looks like he's been hurt. Let's go find him, said Anthony. Touching Anthony's arm, Louise said, Wait a minute. There are some things we need to get first. Matt took his ever-present pad and pencil and began to make a list. Where to get a bowl, some water, and some pair of binoculars. Louise and Anthony would get a dish and some dry dog food, after deciding who would get it. So we have Matt right here, Anthony right there, Mel and Louise. Matt, Anthony, Mel, and Louise. Trying to make sure everyone get the names and get the pictures of everybody here. What the boys agreed to meet back at the lot in 30 minutes. Time went by quickly as the boys hurried to get their supplies. All made it back on time. After making sure they had everything, they would need the boys to begin following the paw prints and allow left in the soft dirt, Mr. Hudson's store. Being quite the detective, look at them. As they walked towards the fence at the rear of the lot, they heard a tiny yap-yap sound. Hold it! Matt yelled. Let's stop here. Looking through the binoculars, Mel began to scan the rear of the lot. Within seconds, he saw movements of the tall grass near the fence. There was a big, beautiful dog with a shiny black coat. One leg was hurt, causing the other dogs to limp on it, all threes. As the dog laid down, Mel saw several small dogs jumping around. Hey fellas, it's a dog, and she got puppies, Mel whispered excitedly. Each boy took a turn looking through the binoculars. They counted 5 beautiful puppies in all. Listen, we don't want to scare the mommy dog or the puppies. So let's pour the food and water into the dish here and put it down over there where she'll see it. When she feels safe, she'll come and get it. My father always said not to get close to 2 animals. Know that you don't know. My father's always said not to get close to animals that you don't know. After placing the food and water where the dogs would see it, the boys returned to their spots a safe distance away. A few minutes later, the big black dog walked over to the food and began to smell it. Then she started to eat. Wow, she's hungry, long since she's been eating, said Anthony. Yeah, sure, she is hungry. She's hurt, replied Louise. I think we should get Doc Rogers. While the dog finished her meal, the boys quickly walked down the block to Pet Friend's Animal Clinic. They was lucky it was lunchtime, and there weren't any patients waiting. The door chimed as a guy entered the clinic. Doc Rogers greeted them. Hey, Louise. Hey, fellas, the veterinarian greeted. Hey, Doc Rogers, the boys replied. What can I do for you today? Asked the vet. Doc Rogers, we found this dog who's been hurt real badly, explained Louise. She got puppies, and we put food, and she looks like she needs help. We put food and water out for her, but we don't know what else to do. Well, come on. Let's go take a look. I have a little time before my next appointment, Doc Rogers said. When they returned to the lot, the boys stayed in the area where they saw the hurt dog. She had gone back to her puppies. Doc Rogers kneeled down near where the boys had placed the food and softly called to the dog. After a few moments, the dog slowly limped over to the veterinarian and laid down on the ground in front of him. The big black dog allowed Doc Rogers to pat her head. He then gently looked at her injured leg. He called Louise and told him to go to the store and ask Mr. Hudson to give him 2 large bags and several paper towels. A few minutes later, Louise returned. Doc Rogers told the boys to the bottom of the box with paper towels to be very careful. Gonna wave to everybody. Carefully place the puppies into the box, and he then very slowly gathered the mommy dog into his arms and told the boys to follow him to the clinic. When they got back to the animal clinic, Doc Rogers checked his watch and realized there was still a little time before an hour before his next appointment. He decided to get a better look at the dog's leg and found that, sure enough, it was broken. The poor dog must have been hit by a car, said the doctor to the boys. I'm going to need to set her leg so that it can heal properly. Gliding her leg around the dog's neck, Doc Rogers realized that there are no collar or dog tag. I can't seem to find a tag that might have let us know who and how we can find her owner. Mo, we can make posters and put them around the neighborhood. Maybe somebody will come up and claim her, suggested Mel. That's a great idea, Mel, said Dr. Rogers. Doc Rogers, said Anthony shyly. Yes, responded the doctor. Would it cost a lot to help her? Asked Anthony. I have 7 weeks worth of allowance saved up. Maybe it'll be enough to pay you. We all have allowance money too, the other boys chimed. I think everything will turn out fine. Just hold on to your money for right now, said Dr. Rogers. If we don't have enough, maybe we can do chores around to make up for what we don't have, suggested Matt. Now that's a great idea, agreed Dr. Raj. I have so much to do before I close the shop that I barely have time to make it home for dinner with my family. First, I have to talk to your parents to make sure it's okay with them. But it shouldn't take us more than an hour at a day to do everything. This is just for 1 week. That should take care of all of our friends' medical costs. It's perfect. I want to be a veterinarian when I grow up, examined Louise. After setting up the dog's leg, Dr. Rogers said keep up Molly and her pups until either her owner or a good home has been found for them. They all agreed that it was a good idea and a plan in case they weren't ready to have the owner, in case the owner wasn't ready. The boys decided to call the mommy dog Molly just because they thought she looked a lot bigger than a dog. Dr. Roch told the boys that Molly was a Labrador Retriever. He also told them that he had called the folks that evening and got permission for them to work at the clinic. The boys thanked Dr. Rogers, headed back to Louise's house to start making posters. At Louise's house, they told Mrs. Garcia all about their afternoon. She helped them gather supplies to make posters. She also brought them sandwiches and more of the wonderful lemonade. The boys had forgotten about lunch, and they were pretty hungry. By the time the posters were ready, Louise's dad had came home from work. They told him about Molly, the big black dog. Mr. Garcia told the kids to just wait a moment, and as soon as he got cleaned up, he would help them put up the posters. After they hung up the last poster at Wilson's dry cleaner, Mr. Garcia dropped the boys at their houses, and he and Louise went home. That evening, just as promised, Dr. Rogers called the boys' parents, told them about the events of the day, and asked the boys could work in the office at the closing time for 1 hour a day for a week. All the parents gave permission. They also thanked Dr. Rogers for helping them with their sons. As Anthony was getting ready for bed, his mom and dad came into his room and their talk with Dr. Rogers. Your mom and I think you and your friends are pretty good, and special guys for helping Molly and her puppies, said Anthony's father. Dr. Rogers is the one who's doing all the work, Dad, replied Anthony. Maybe so, son, but if it weren't for you and your fellas, Molly and her puppies wouldn't have a home. They'll be still in that empty lot, said Anthony's dad. I think it's supposed to rain tonight, so it's really lucky that she came along. Anthony's mother, good night, my little superhero. Anthony's father told him good night, and he turned off the light. Good night, Mom and Dad, replied Anthony, the little Afro boy. And it's the little Afro boy. Anthony's parents could hear them chuckle. Anthony could hear his parents chuckle as they went down the hall. He went to sleep wondering how they learned about at the Bridges home as Matt and Mel's mom gave their bowls of delicious to the big black dog. We have allowance money too, other boys chimed. Well, I think it turned out. Oops, I think I read that part. I did. Have to turn the page. Look at them and all their little ventures. Berry dumplings and glasses of cold milk, their favorite dessert. She told them how proud she was of them and the boys' friends as she tucked her boys into bed. Mrs. Bridge kisses her twin boys goodnight and went downstairs to work in her office. The next morning, the sun was shining brightly in clear blue skies. The air smelled fresh and clean. Louise, Anthony, and Mel were very restless. Mrs. Bridge said her boys were fidgety. Anthony's mom said, we're going to call him Antsy. Mrs. Garcia just smiled as she watched Louise check the time. They all were going to meet at Anthony's friend's house and play before going to Pet Friends. But there was one strict rule each household: no visiting until 11 o'clock. Anthony's mother, Mrs. Cooper, thought it was just downright impolite to visit any earlier. Mrs. Garcia and Mrs. Bridge also seemed to think it was a good rule to follow. Finally, 11 o'clock came. They twins kissed their mom and left Anthony's. Luis hugged his mom and tweaked his little sister's nose before running out the house. Mel, Matt, and Luis arrived at Anthony's house at the same time. Anthony was waiting for them on his front porch. The boys were excited. "Hola, amigos," greeted Anthony. "Hola," the boys replied. Luis taught his friends a few words and phrases in Spanish. He liked speaking Spanish with his friends. I didn't think 11 o'clock would ever come. Moaned Louise. "I know. I kept checking all the clocks around the house to make sure they had the same time," chuckled Mel. "Hey, everybody wants to play four squares?" asked Matt. They all thought it was a game of four squares was a good idea. Anthony got his ball and played until Mrs. Cooper called them in for lunch. After playing, the boys played Pirates, one of their favorite games. The group imagined themselves to be a bunch of swashbucklers sailing the seas and searching for treasure and adventures. Anthony's front porch made a great ship. Finally, it was time for them to go to the animal clinic for their first day on the job. When they reached the clinic, Mrs. Glenn, the receptionist, gave the boys a list of chores. As the boys were about to get busy, they heard Doc Rogers come down the hall. "Hey, fellas," greeted Doc Rogers. "It's good to see you today." "Are you guys ready to get started?" asked the veterinarian. "We've been ready all day," laughed Louise. "Hey, Doc, has anyone called about Molly?" asked Matt. "Not yet," Doc Rogers replied. "But maybe somebody will call tomorrow." "May we see Molly and the puppies before we get started?" asked Anthony. "Sure, follow me." They ran right down the hall, said Dr. Rogers, as he turned to take the boys to Molly. Dr. Rogers led them into a small room. There were animal cages and the perfect sizes for Molly and her puppies. There were also a lot of food and fresh water and comfortable dog beds that was big enough for Molly and her whole family. Matt, Louise, and Anthony were surprised by how quickly Molly seemed to be recovering. They were very happy to see how well she and her little ones were doing. When the puppies saw the boys, they began to yap and Molly wagged her tail. After watching the dogs for a few minutes, the boys decided it was time to get back to work. They swept, emptied the trash, and hosted the dog run. They prepared the bowl after bowls of pet food was filled with dishes of food and water. They even cleaned the bird cages. The boys worked very hard. They wanted to do a good job for Doc Rogers. When they finished, the veterinarian thanked the boys for doing a fine job. After they were done, they said their goodnights. Doc Rogers, the four boys left the animal clinic looking forward to return the next day. As they walked down the street, each of the boys seemed to have a lot on their mind. You see? Cleaning and sweeping like Miss Tiana. Finally, Mel said, "You know, Molly and her puppies aren't going to be able to stay at the clinic forever." "Brother, you're reading my mind," replied Matt. "What if no one calls?" "Hey, we have to just find homes for them." "We can do it," said Louise. With that, the rest of the boys felt a lot better. Of course, they could find homes for Molly and her 5 little puppies. It could take a little work, but they can do it. That night, each of the young boys told their families all about what it was like working at the animal clinic. They also explained to their parents that Molly may not have an owner and asked if they could check with their coworkers to see if anyone might want a dog. All their parents offered to help find Molly and her puppies a home. At bedtime, each of the boys remembered to include Dr. Rogers, Molly, and puppies in his prayers. They all slept very well. The next day, the boys went to Pet Friends. They immediately asked if anyone had called about Molly. Mrs. Glenn said no, but told them not to worry because Molly was such a great dog and surely someone was missing her. Later, Louise saw Dr. Rogers walking down the hall. He asked him how old. At 6 weeks, could the puppy eat food and not depend on their mother's milk? Dr. Raj told Louise Molly's puppies were old enough to be adopted. Puppies should be before they separated for their mothers. The veterinarian told them they should be at least 6 weeks. When Anthony's father came that evening, he stopped by and kissed Anthony goodnight. Surprise! When Anthony's eyes fluttered open. "Hi, Dad," said Anthony sleepily. "Hey, buddy." "What are you doing awake?" asked Mr. Cooper. "Oh, I was only half awake," replied Anthony. Which half was awake?" joked Anthony's father. "My brain hurts." "Oh, my brain," said Anthony, smiling. "I guess I was thinking about Molly and her puppies." "I see. I have some good news for you." "It'll have to wait until breakfast to tell you, but I guess I have to tell it to you now. You're going to get any sleep tonight." "What is it, Dad?" Anthony asked as he sat up in bed. "Well, I found homes for 2 of the dogs," said Mr. Cooper proudly. "Wow, that's great," shouted Anthony. "Shh, inside voices," joked Mr. Cooper. "We don't want to wake the whole neighborhood," said Mr. Cooper playfully. "Now go to sleep. We'll talk about this in the morning." Mr. Cooper kissed his son goodnight. Anthony snuggled under the covers and drifted off to sleep. The next morning at 11 o'clock, the boys met at Matt and Mel's house. They were so excited that his dad was finding homes for 2 of the puppies. Matt and Mel had even better news. Their mom was going to let them choose a pup for their very own. The friends spent the rest of the day collecting supplies to build a doghouse for the twins' new puppy. They even found a bunch of discarded stones, pieces that could be used as a walkway for the doghouse. Anthony's mom gave the boys an old paint that they'll be just enough for their puppy's new home. It was a perfect shade of red. The guys all agreed that this will be the best doghouse ever. When the boys got into the animal clinic that afternoon, Doc Rogers was very excited. "Fellas, guess who's here?" he said. "Molly's owner, the Lambert family." "Really?" said Matt. How do we know they're really her owner?" asked Mel. "I assure you, I asked all the right questions before allowing them to see her," responded Dr. Rogers. "Besides, when they walked in, Molly almost jumped into their arms." "What about the puppies? Are they going to take them too?" asked Anthony. "Well, we've been trying to find homes for them and had to have some good luck," at Louise. "Well, let's go talk to the Lathrams. I think you'll like them. They're a very nice family," said Dr. Raj. The boys followed the veterinarian. to what they began to call Molly's room. Mr. and Mrs. Latham, their daughters Jessie and their son Scott, were already there. There are the special young boys I've been told about. Mel, Anthony, Matt, and Louise. The Latham's Molly owners beamed. Dr. Rogers. The boys and the Latham family shook hands. Mr. Latham thanked the boys for taking care of their dog. Mrs. Latham also thanked them and told them that the dog's real name was Cleo. Like Cleopatra, said Anthony. That's right, replied Scott. Just like Cleopatra, the queen of the Nile. Cool, said Matt. Well, cool. Way cool, said Mel. So, do you live around here? Louise asked. Sure do. We just moved in about a couple of weeks ago, replied Scott. Where? Fraser Street, said Jessie, joining in the conversation. Hey, that's where we all live, Anthony said. You guys must have moved in at midnight, or we would have seen you. We did move in at the dark, said Scott, smiling. I'm glad we finally met Jessie and I. We were hoping to meet some other kids in the neighborhood. Are there any girls in the neighborhood? Asked Jessie. Plenty of them, replied Mel. We'll show you around tomorrow if you want. That'll be great, Jessie and Scott said at once. Dr. Rogers turned to Mr. and Mrs. Latham, asked if they were planning to keep all of Cleo's puppies. They said they'd like to give one to Mrs. Latham's mother, and although they'd like to keep the rest, they couldn't. Hearing this as she walking down the aisle, Mrs. Glenn stopped and asked if she could have one of the puppies. Everyone agreed that this would be great if she could take one of Cleo's puppies, or pups. Anthony told the Lathams about his dad finding homes for two of the puppies. Matt and Mel proudly announced that their mom gave them permission to choose a puppy if, of course, if it was all right with the owners. And it was just as happy for that all of Cleo puppy would be in good homes. They even asked if the twins and Mrs. Glenn would bring their puppy over for a while to visit Cleo from time to time. Mrs. Glenn picked out a furry little black and brown puppy, a brown girl pup. Matt and Mel choose a soft black girl pup. They look like Cleo. Anthony chose two furry little black boy puppies. One was brown with black tips on his tail. The other was brown with black paws and looked as if he was wearing little black boots. Dr. Rogers got boxes for traveling, food, supplies, pet supplies, as they were going to present for her Cleo's puppies. The boys told Cleo and her remaining puppies goodbye and promised Scott and Jessie they would see them the next day at 11 o'clock. Doc Rogers gave the boys a little ride home. He dropped the twins off first. Then he dropped off Anthony and Louise. Louise got out of Anthony's house so that he could help him carry the puppies and pet supply. Louise only lived a few doors away from Anthony. When it was time to go, his father walked him home. After dinner, Anthony and his mother spent the next 2 hours playing with the puppies. Finally, the puppies went to sleep. Anthony got ready for bed too. That night, his mother let him stay awake until his father came home. When Mr. Cooper walked in, Anthony was so excited that he jumped into his dad's arms. At the same time, Mr. Cooper heard the puppies barking in the kitchen. "What's all that ruckus?" Mr. Cooper asked as he carried Anthony into the kitchen. "It's the puppies." "Dad, they're here," giggled Anthony. "What a relief. I thought Mom was going to make all that noise." "I thought Mom was making all that noise," said Mr. Cooper as he winked to his wife. "Funny, very funny," said Mrs. Cooper as she pretended to scowl her husband. Anthony's father walked over to the puppies and picked them up. They started licking his face. He walked over to which one he liked the best. Neither could decide, so he decided to pick up both. They both were so cute. Come on, you guys. We have to make a choice until Uncle Steve, who'll probably come early this morning to pick up one of the dogs. So, the choice is yours, said Mr. Cooper. Uncle Steve getting one of the dogs? That's great, shouted Anthony. I get to see one of the puppies at Matt and Mel's one, and the other at Uncle Steve's, and the others at Cleo's. That Molly's real name at Jesse and Scott's house. I was getting a little sad when I thought I wouldn't. See them choosing the dogs? Little puppies? Kind of looks like Stella. Looks like Charlotte's dog, Stella. See them again. You'll get to see another one of the pups soon, said Anthony's mom. That's right, every day, added Anthony's dad. Mom and Dad, what do you mean? Asked Anthony as he glanced from one parent to the other. Back and forth. We think you can give a puppy a great home, said Mrs. Cooper. Oh boy, this is so great. Thanks, Mom and Dad, exclaimed Anthony. Anthony's father told him it was time for him to go to bed. Anthony asked his parents if the puppies could sleep in his room. They said yes, but would have to clean up any messes they might make. With his parents' help, he took the pups into his room. Anthony kissed his parents goodnight and made sure the pups were comfortable in their box. The next morning at 11, Louise stopped by Anthony's to see if he wanted to go over to Scott's house. The two boys and Anthony's new dog, Boots, walked down the street to Bridget's house. They were there, joined by the twins and their new dog, Sheba. It was a great morning as the boys and their puppies walked down Fraser Street to welcome a whole new family of friends. And that's it. That is Friends to the Rescue. I said insecure earlier, it's Friends to the Rescue. So we read 2 books so far. We've read Leo, the Late Bloomer, one who didn't have friends. And we read Friends to the Rescue. Thank you so much. So we have one more book that we're going to read today, just so that everybody can go off and enjoy the rest of the beautiful afternoon. And the next book we're going to read is called Princess and the Frog. I don't know why I couldn't find my book, but I did find one. A tale as old as time. Older than the 1920s, y'all. Let's go and get started. There once was a princess. She was no ordinary princess. However, the princess loved to play alone in the palace gardens while she tossed around in her favorite ball gown. Splash! Her beautiful golden gown had plopped right into a small pond nearby. She ran over to the pond and watched sadly as the golden spears sank deeper and deeper into the water. The princess looked down at her dress. She was wearing her favorite golden dress. The sparkles, the gems, and the front of the gown was rare, and she was afraid that if she entered the water, she would ruin her outfit. Frustrated with her situation, the princess began to cry. Suddenly, the princess heard a strange noise coming from out of the water. Hop, hop. Do you know how to swim? Asked a small frog. Hop. The princess looked up. She squinched her face up at the sight of the green creature on the lily pad. I do, she replied. Well, why don't you come in? He asked. I don't want to spoil my dress, my beautiful gold dress, the princess replied. She rolling her eyes at the frog. Well, I guess I could get it for you. You can? Please do, she cried. But before he jumped into the water, the frog turned to her and asked, what would you give me in return for grabbing your golden ball? Oh, you can have anything you desires, the princess replied impatiently to be playing again. What I would like is a friend, that's all. A friend to spend time with me, to eat supper with me, to read with me, to sleep beside me, and to kiss me goodnight, the frog said. Anything, the princess cried. And with that, the small green frog hopped into the water and retrieved the princess' golden dress. The minute he handed over, the girl ran around giggling and tossing her beloved ball up in the air. She had completely forgotten about the frog. Oh, and this is how the frog looks. Hopefully y'all can see the frog right there. Oh, looks so cute. I wish Naveen had a crown on. All right, back to the story. At supper, the girl was seated at the table with her father, the king. Before either of them could take a bite, there was 3 small knocks at the door. The king got up and walked and opened it. Hop, 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 in walked the small green frog. I have come to eat supper with you, princess, the frog said happily. Hopping on the table, the princess gently grabbed the frog and placed him outside and slammed the door. She turned her heels and sat down at her spot once more, ignoring the suspicious look from the king. And who was that, princess? He asked. Oh, no one, she replied. The stern look from her father caused her to go red with embarrassment. She told him that she promised the frog that she would spend time with him, eat with him, read with him, and let him sleep with her and kiss him goodnight. But I don't want to hang out with him. He's gross, she continued. A promise is a promise, princess. We must always keep our promises, said the king wisely. With that, the girl slowly shuffled over at the door and opened it. Hop, hop, hop. The frog ate supper with her and followed the princess into her bedroom, where she began to read. What are you reading? He asked, trying to peer over her shoulder to see. Nothing, she shrugged him off. Sadly, the frog hopped over to her bed and sat down on her pillow. Before he could get comfortable, the princess ran over to him, picked him up, and placed him by the window. That's kind of how I met Naveen. But you promised, he cried. She sighed and took him back to her bed. She read him a bedtime story, and surprisingly, the frog was quite smart and funny. She enjoyed his company. When it was time to sleep, The frog asked her for a bedtime kiss. She refused, scrunching up her face once more. The princess shut out the light and tried to go to sleep. Suddenly, she heard sounds of weeping. She turned the lights back on to see the frog beside her, wiping his tears. She was hit with a wave of guilt, making the poor frog cry. She tucked him in the bed beside her and gently kissed him. Whoosh! All of a sudden, the small green frog transformed into a handsome young prince right before her eyes. She jumped back from the bed in surprise. The prince informed her that an evil witch had put a spell on him, and only a kiss could return him back to his original state. It just so happened that the princess was the first one to break the spell. Forever after, the prince and the princess were able to play together in the palace gardens. The princess was happier than ever to have a playmate. And whenever she accidentally threw the ball too high in the air, she was ecstatic to have a companion to go fetch it for her. That is the story of the princess and the frog. And this one is by DLTK's Fairy Tales. Thank y'all. I hope that everybody had a really good time doing Storytime with Tiana, Corona Storytime, especially with the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. I'm about to get ready to go. It's pretty warm in here and hot. I hope everyone has a good time. Join me tomorrow at 1:30 with Storytime with Tinkerbell. We have other stories, tales, and fables to get into. I hope that everybody enjoyed this time of being quarantined and take this time to rest. We all work hard. We all should just play just as hard. I hope everybody have a good day. Thank you for joining me, and please, enchanté and bye, cher. Thank you for all the hearts, love. Join me tomorrow. Bye, everyone.